They had once been inseparable. In the beginning, it had been like a dream, a whirlwind of passion and shared moments that seemed to belong to a different lifetime, a simpler time. She had been young, naive, and full of hope. He had been everything she thought she wanted, charming, confident, powerful. Coming from a wealthy traditional family, their arranged marriage had been met with high expectations. They had grown up in a culture where the sanctity of marriage meant everything, where love was supposed to grow from respect, trust, and shared values. But when they were married, it felt as though the world had handed them a fairy tale. For a while, it had been perfect. They had learned to live with each other, to understand the nuances of their partnership. The language of their love was sometimes unspoken, sometimes in the form of stolen glances and small gestures, like when he would absent-mindedly stroke her hair as they sat in the quiet of their home in the evenings. She had once believed he loved her in a way that would endure everything, that it was stronger than anything that could tear them apart. But things had changed. Over time, the walls between them had grown. It wasn't just the constant pressure of managing his high-profile career that had shifted the dynamics of their relationship. It was the slow, insidious erosion of trust. What had started as a deep connection, something that had seemed perfect, had fractured little by little. She had always been there for him, his rock, his confidant. But when he had started pulling away, she didn't know how to stop it. It had started with silence. She would ask him what was wrong, but he would just brush her off with vague answers. Work, stress, family matters. They had no children yet, but every time they talked about starting a family, it felt more like a distant dream, a negotiation instead of something they both truly wanted. It had gotten worse after the miscarriage. He had become distant, colder, and the words between them became fewer and fewer. She was grieving, but he wasn't there for her. It felt like he had become a stranger. The long nights were spent in a silence that suffocated her, and his indifference made her wonder whether they had ever been truly happy. Then came the outsider. It was a moment of weakness. The conversation had started innocently enough, a friendly co-worker from his office, but it had turned into something else. When she found out, she didn't know if she was more devastated by the betrayal or the realization that she had let herself become so numb to it. He had always been the one to set the rules, to control the narrative, and she had let him. She had let him because she thought she had no other choice. But when the outsider's voice reached her, when the news of his infidelity hit her, everything she had once believed in shattered. They stood there now, facing each other in the mirror. She was no longer the woman he had married, the woman who had accepted everything he gave her without question. Her eyes were darker, the innocence long gone. She was no longer the naive girl he had swept off her feet. She had learned what it meant to fight for herself, to stand up against the silence that had consumed their marriage. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, the life that grew there a silent testament to the complexities of their situation. The child she carried was a product of love, but it was also a product of everything that had gone wrong. She had wanted to keep the pregnancy a secret, to figure out what to do with the mess of emotions swirling inside her. But now, here he was, his hands possessively on her body, and all she could think about was the child. Would it grow up in the shadow of a marriage that had failed? Would it know love, or would it only know resentment? He stood behind her, his eyes dark, his grip still firm around her body. His gaze was relentless, piercing into hers through the mirror. It was as if he wanted her to break, to say something, anything. He wanted her to tell him that she hated him, that she was done. But she couldn't. Words, he pressed, his voice now low and full of tension. Say it. Tell me how much you hate me. Tell me you're leaving. You know you can't, right? You're mine. Always have been, always will be. His words cut through her, but it wasn't the anger she felt. It was pain. Pain for everything they had lost. Pain for everything they could have had, but never would. She had come to a point where she no longer recognized the man standing behind her. the man she had loved so fiercely, the man who had once been her protector, her partner, now felt like a stranger. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I don't hate you," she said, but even she could hear the doubt in her own voice. "I don't know what I feel anymore." His hand tightened on her stomach, the weight of his touch making her breath catch. She should have pushed him away. She should have screamed at him, told him how he had broken her heart, how he had betrayed her in the most unforgivable way. But all she could do was stand there, feeling the weight of his presence, feeling his every word and every touch pressing her deeper into the abyss. He lowered his face to her ear, his lips grazing the delicate skin of her neck. "You're mine," he repeated, but this time there was an edge to his voice, something darker. "You've always been mine. You will never leave me. Not now, not ever." Her heart raced. The words he spoke both a comfort and a curse. How many times had he said this to her before? How many times had he claimed her as his own? She had never questioned it until now, until she realized how much he had taken from her, her freedom, her voice, her sense of self. He was right about one thing. She had never truly left him. Not even when she had tried. Not even when the idea of divorce had crossed her mind so many times. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about everything they had been, everything they could have been. She had loved him. She had loved him so deeply that, even now, she couldn't bring herself to say the words he wanted to hear. She couldn't tell him that she was done. "I can't leave you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I hate what we've become, but I can't leave." His breath hitched, and for a brief moment, she could feel the tension in his body shift. It wasn't just about control anymore. It wasn't just about power. It was something more raw, something more vulnerable. "Why?" he asked, his voice now softer, more unsure than before. "Why can't you leave me?" Her heart ached, her chest tightening with the weight of everything that was left unsaid. "Because—" she paused, struggling to find the words. "Because despite everything, I still need you. I still want you. Even though you've destroyed me, I'm still here. And I don't know how to walk away from that." His grip loosened for a moment, and she could feel him breathing, could feel his uncertainty mingling with her own. The room, the world outside, disappeared for a moment as they stood there, two broken souls caught in the aftermath of their own making. The years of love, of pain, of everything they had been, all hung in the balance. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing against her cheek. "We can't keep doing this," he whispered, "but I don't know how to let you go either." The truth hung between them like a fragile thread. They were caught in an endless loop of love and hate, of betrayal and need. And in that moment, they both knew that no matter what they said, no matter how much they fought it, they would never truly be free of each other.